The Libido Doctor is in.
Hello and welcome. This is Dr. Suzanne, and today I would like to talk to you about something very special. It's a result of my conversation and intimacy with the Lord, and it's going to be about 10 questions I asked Him regarding marital sex. Okay, so how did this come about? I was actually in my time of prayer, and things were going so well because I was learning so much. And I actually wanted to talk about something that's very spiritual. And then the Lord stopped me and He said, "No, I want you to talk about fellatio." I was like, "Huh? Fellatio? Why? Is it because I wrote a booklet about it?" But He said, "No, He just wants me to talk about it." So I was like, "Okay, why? Do you like it?" He said, "Well." So I was like, "Okay, no worries. I'm going to talk about it." And, as I was talking about it, we got into different other things. And I started asking more questions because I like to go deep. I like to ask. I'm like a detective. Okay. So I want to bring you 10 questions and answers I asked the Lord, right? And this is strictly from our conversation and interaction. And clearly, guys, it's not that I'm guessing, all right? So I'm going to use my notes and go over the questions, all right? So the first thing you would like to know, that was the first question I asked, okay? Should a woman be ashamed about her body, her size, her this, her that, her imperfections? And he said, once a man and a woman are naked and ready to engage in foreplay, there should be no shame. And he reminded me that Adam and Eve were naked and not ashamed. What does that mean? As a woman, you should not want to always hide, in the dark. I mean, you can like the dark. It's okay. But you should not feel ashamed of your breasts because they are falling, of your, buttocks because it's too large, of all these little imperfections that usually freeze us women. Oh my God, I have this dark spot here. Oh my God, I don't have my eyelash done. Once you are naked together and engage in foreplay, you have to go to the end. You have to go till climax, okay? You don't stop because, oh, I didn't like this. Okay? So that is the very first thing I asked. There is no shame. There is no condemnation in loving each other and making love to each other. All right? That's the first thing. Number two, I asked the Lord, how does a man take his wife? There are two orifices. So the Lord said there is one that's designated by the Lord. You guessed it, is your feminine flower. That's the orifice through which your husband should take you. Okay, number three, I asked him, okay, Lord, there was this story in the Bible about the son of Judah, who ejaculated outside of Tamar because he didn't want to give her a child, and you killed him. So my question was, do you actually hate when men ejaculate outside of a vagina? Because I remember that when I was in middle school, I think, and we had sexual education, one of the things was to prevent pregnancy was to ejaculate outside. Because look, it's cheap, it's easy, you don't have to worry about whatever. So the Lord said, no, a man must ejaculate inside his wife. Now, if he's using a preservative, he must dispose of it himself after intercourse and flush it in the toilet. He doesn't leave it on the bed, on the floor or just here and there. No, you're not going to be careless with that. But ideally, you want to ejaculate inside your wife, okay? Now, I ask the fourth question. Is birth control permitted? And the answer is yes, birth control is permitted. Then I ask a further question. Okay, Lord, sometimes you have intercourse and you're close to your ovulation and you might not necessarily want to be pregnant and maybe you were not on birth control. Is the morning after pill allowed? He said yes, within 72 hours of intercourse. After that time, if you got pregnant, it's on you. You keep the baby. Then the fifth question was about abortion. Is abortion permitted? No, abortion is not permitted. It doesn't matter if you think that this embryo is barely a week, a month, 2 months. Abortion is not permitted because a soul is already formed. Remember, God said something to Jeremiah. Before you were formed in your mother's womb, I already knew you. He sends souls to be formed in their mother's womb. So if you've missed that time of 72 hours of after pill where you're still in that grace period, leave that baby alone. Abortion is not allowed. Number 6, I asked about dildos. Are dildos permitted? What is a dildo? A dildo is a sex toy that has the shape of a male organ women can use to give themselves pleasure. Dildos are not allowed at all. Okay? Dildos are not allowed. So number 7, I asked about anal sex. I said, Lord, some men prefer anal sex because of the tightness. I don't even know why, because, I'm not the one doing that. So I don't really know what they feel, right? So is this something you allow in a married couple? Because there's nowhere really in the Bible where you say a man is not supposed to take his wife, from the anus. But he says, no, it's absolutely forbidden because of the spiritual consequences that are attached to anal sex. I was like, what about it? So the receiver, which will most likely be the wife, doesn't just receive the organ of her husband through the anus, but also receives a spiritual mark. And that spiritual mark lands between the eyes, somewhere here, between your eyes. And what does that do? It does 2 things. If by any chance you did it before you got married, you will most likely be paired with someone that's not your destiny husband. You will miss it in marriage. If you are actively doing it in marriage, this mark here will cause progressive rejection and end up in divorce. Kai, I was shocked. So I was like, okay, Father, if people did that because, they didn't know, maybe it was enjoyable, is there a way we can erase that mark? Because most likely it's the woman who is going to have it. He said, yes, there is a prayer, and he gave me the prayer, the protocol, and the code to get that thing erased. And I'm probably going to post it to my prayer channel, which is called Praying Wombs, okay? It's going to be probably the next video or so. So pay attention. Go look for it. Now, I asked the 8th question about cunnilingus. What is cunnilingus? Is when a man uses his tongue on the woman's flower. It's permitted, but there's one restriction. The tongue should not go inside the vagina. So the man can use his tongue on the clitoris, the labia majora, the lips outside, but his tongue should not go inside the vagina. No, that's forbidden. Then I asked my favorite. Number 9, is fellatio allowed? I was kind of scared. So the Lord said, yes. And he reminded me of this passage in the Songs of Solomon, where the lady says, I sat under your tree and your fruit was sweet to my taste. He says that's the metaphor for fellatio. Fellatio is when the woman uses her tongue to give pleasure to the husband's organ, okay? But there is one big restriction. You are not allowed to do it outside of marriage. If it's not your husband, you don't do it. That is the big no. These are special privileges that you get inside the marriage. Okay? Fellatio. Then I asked about, the frequency. Are we supposed to do it every day? Are we supposed to do it every time? And God said, you can manage your frequency, but at least once a week. That's not too bad. Okay? So then I was like, okay, Father, there are spiritual consequences for anal sex. What about fellatio? Is there something behind the scenes that we don't see? And the Lord actually told me that there are 4 spiritual benefits for doing fellatio. 2 for men, 2 for women. I was like, Kai, that thing is true. That is true. Because I can definitely, I can trace back and see things that happened, It is very true, kids. It is very true. So, I will encourage you, to just do it and just pay attention and observe. I'm not going to say what the Lord said to me about the 4 spiritual benefits because those are positive things, it's okay. You don't necessarily need to know or worry about it. Then I asked if it was an act of submission. He said no. It's actually an act of reverence. It's an act of reverence. Okay? So he also told me about other acts of reverence a woman can do for her husband. But I do another video for that. Or maybe do like a master class for just select people because those information are really, they are deep. I'm telling you, they are too deep. All right, so my last question was about masturbation. Is masturbation allowed? And I asked a question very sure of myself, right? Because I did a video in the past about how masturbation should not be done. The preceptor is sacred. I talked about Genesis 17 where Abraham did the circumcision. It was an altar, blah, 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 blah. The Lord said, look, masturbation is not a sin. I was like, Répétez, please. Masturbation is not a sin, but it has to be done in the shower. No porn. Not that you sit down, you put your porn and you begin to do. No. In the shower is allowed. Okay? And of course, I asked about porn, and porn is not allowed. Okay, guys? So these are the 10 questions I asked the Lord about marital sex. I encourage you to go back, listen again. If you have questions and if you have concerns, just let me know in the comments. And I go back to the Lord and ask. Okay? Thank you so much for listening, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.